That is right. It is always game day in Cleveland. We are back and we are ready for more. We've got some, I don't know, we might have a couple little special nuggets for you moving forward with the show here. He's Daryl Ryder. I'm Andy Baskin. Of course, we're always brought to you by Smiley One and Bryant, Northeast Ohio's premier heating and cooling systems. Daryl, it is good to see you again. We got a little bit of rest. I got out of the country. You've been covering all kinds of stuff, baseball, basketball, but now we get back into gears. We get a little bit closer to the draft, and the guys are back in town for voluntary workouts. Let me start with the very first question, because I know there's other stuff to talk about, like helmets and stuff like that. Daryl, how voluntary are these voluntary workouts? Come on now. There's no way they're voluntary. Really? Are they?
They're voluntary.
Wink, wink. Gotcha.
The quarterback, Deshaun Watson, is participating in the voluntary work.
Good.
I don't know how much he's actually doing right now. Actually, well, they're not doing a lot right now. They're sitting in meetings. They're learning the offense. Well, at least on that side of the ball, because Ken Dorsey obviously has come in and they've, I guess, drawn some cool new stuff up. So they're doing that. And then they're hitting the weight room, or in this case, the Casey Coleman Fieldhouse, because the weight room is still in there. But breaking news came down on Tuesday when we talked to Kevin Stefanski. He told us there's a new weight room currently under construction outside the Fieldhouse. So the never-ending construction project that is the Browns training complex, a.k.a. Cross Country Mortgage Campus, continues because they're building a weight room outside the Fieldhouse. And the reason they're doing that actually is because the team got a D and a D plus on the NFLPA survey when it came to the weight room facilities. Mm-hmm. Although it was funny, I asked Denzel Ward about it on Tuesday, and he's like, well, it met my standards. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, well, survey said D and D plus. So,
Daryl, I mean, we've talked about this before, that it is, it seems odd. Now, when they first built the Fieldhouse, the Casey Coleman Fieldhouse, which wasn't the case, it was just the Fieldhouse at that point. When they first built that was state of the art. Since then, Kent State, Akron, Spire, Massillon. I mean, we're talking about high schools that have full 100-yard facilities in Northeast Ohio that are unbelievably nice and probably much more accommodating for an NFL team than the NFL's team and the NFL team's own warehouse that they use there or a field house that they use. It just seems odd to me that we live in the birthplace of football, and yet high schools have a better facility than the Browns do. It's got to be a little disheartening.
Well, when they build that dome in Brook Park, then they'll worry about building an indoor so that they can give them the indoor atmosphere. Maybe they'll like do the entire practice field lot indoor or something, be like the largest warehouse indoor facility known to mankind. But yeah, they're not doing anything with. They're sticking with it right now. It's like 55 yards because 25 yards of it is the weight room,
right?
And so once they get that stuff back out of there, because COVID is behind them, that's the whole reason it ended up there. And then they're like, well, we can put some treatment, cryogenic stuff and what recovery modules and things like that. That's in the old weight room that used to be between the locker room and the field house out there in Berea. So that space was never reclaimed as a weight room. And so they were kind of stuck leaving it in the field house, but now they're going to go ahead and have their own area, and it's going to be in place in time for training camp. And they're not going to need it because training camp is going to be down in West Virginia at the Greenbrier. So that is what it is. But yeah, the never-ending construction project in Berea continues.
All right, so Daryl, let me. I know I want to get to the helmets because I know we've got this great presentation of helmets we're going to show, and it was. But J.W. Johnson was on our show today, and I know we're going to talk a lot about that a little bit later. But one of the things he did talk about was the facilities and the grounds that are going on in Berea. Jeff asked him, and I kind of forgot about it. You talked about it with the expanded weight room facility that they'll be having. But you can see how all that land is starting to expand. And I thought it was interesting when JW started talking about university hospitals.
Yeah, so
and that's a part of the deal too.
Yeah, so here's what they're doing. Since he let the cat out of the bag, I think I can speak freely on this.
Good. Okay, good. Because I was wondering, because I've looked at it 1,000 times, and I'm like, man, what are they going to do? They can put practice fields on the other side of the street. Are they going to get rid of the street? What are they going to do?
Well, they have purchased basically the entire neighborhood.
Yeah.
The old Serpentini Chevrolet body shop out there. That is
Who's
now
listening
owned
over here?
by the Browns.
Yes.
Space across the street from that, or I should say down Lou Groza Boulevard across from Front Street there, down by where like the old train station is. They own land there now. So here's what what they want to do. Okay. That doesn't mean they're going to do it, because they're still talking to the city of Berea. They're still talking to Baldwin Wallace University. They're still talking to, folks out there. But their grand master plan, they would like to do a community field that can be used by the university. It can be used
Oh, that's great.
by the Berea Mid-Park school system, can be used just community groups or whatever. They like to build a rec center as well for the community to use. They want to build some dorms/student housing that can be used for BW. They'd like to build a hotel that can not only be used by the team, but can be used just it's a hotel, right?
Right.
So there's that aspect of it. There is a university hospitals component. Of course, they're the healthcare provider of the Browns, or I should say healthcare sponsor and provider of the Browns. They have the title to the team radio network as well. So there's a university hospitals component that they want to do, a healthcare facility of some sort. So there's a lot. And then, it's not going to be like, and I realize we have people across the country and maybe even across the world listen to our podcast, but if you're local to Cleveland, and of Crocker Park in Westlake, the thought was that that's what the Browns were about to build in Berea. That's not necessarily the case. Yes, there's going to be some retail component as part of that development, but that's not the central theme. So those are just some of the things. And again, that list that I just gave, Andy, there's no guarantee that all that stuff's going to get done. These are just ideas that they've been kicking around with the stakeholders in Berea to get their feedback, get their interest in the project and whatnot. But, they're almost done out there acquiring land. And at some point they got to get some shovels in the ground, and they've got a lot of projects they want to build. Hence,
Do you think there's a field house in the future though?
If they build a dome. Yeah.
Wait, you're saying if they build a dome? Oh, you're saying that they'll never have a field house at that facility, though.
Well, if they build a dome stadium in Brook Park,
right?
then yes, they will make the field house a priority. The reason the field house isn't a priority, Andy, is
I see, because they play outside. Okay, that makes sense. I had to think about that.
Well, not only is it because they play outside, but they just spent millions of dollars to redo their practice fields. The front two fields closest to that building were torn out. They put a new heating and drainage system in there and some other stuff, that whatever the grounds crew needs to maintain those fields year round. But they can basically now grow those practice fields in January and February in the dead of winter. Okay. So they invested all that money in that so that they can, because the reason they needed the field house was you couldn't use the practice fields come December because they'd be frozen over and you risk guys getting hurt and things like that. That's no longer a problem with the investment they made. So that's why all of a sudden the field house is no longer as big of a priority as maybe you and I think it should be.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, really, that was a lot of stuff that I had never heard before. And then JW had kind of led us that way too. I want to talk more about what JW said today. I do want to talk about the helmets. I know there's a lot of people that are hanging on. They want to hear that. He's Daryl Ryder. I'm Andy Baskin.
My hands now.
Wait, give me the preview, the quick preview before we go to break. Real quick, if you're watching on YouTube. Here it comes. Oh, there it is. There's your preview. It's always game day in Cleveland. It is always game day in Cleveland. He's Daryl Ryder. I'm Andy Baskin, brought to you locally by Smiley One and Bryant, Northeast Ohio's premier heating and cooling solution. Okay, Daryl, so let's get into it. The big news today was the helmet and the face mask. And I mean, to me, it does seem silly because I'm going to be honest with you. I care as long as it's not. The only time I really care is if it's embarrassing. It's just that's it. If it's ugly or embarrassing, Major League Baseball, you have lived up to that threshold with the see-through pants and the horrible names on the back of the jerseys that are like this big. I mean, ridiculous. Quit looking like little leaguers out there. They got to fix that by the end of the season. But when it comes to the Browns, people want to know what's going on. And Daryl, I got to tell you, you always have some pretty good insight onto what's going on, more in depth, more information than I can find anywhere else. So exactly what was the huge announcement today about the face mask and the matting, and take it away.
Well, it's what I told you was going to happen last fall, and that was that the white face mask was coming back. So the matte finish with the brown face mask that they had.
By the way, you're officially a loser. Keep going. Yes.
Okay. That's gone. Just threw it in the trash can. And we'd like to welcome back Bernie.
Dun,
The
dun.
Bernie helmets are back. There they are. The Bernie helmets are back. And I found it absolutely hilarious, Andy, that on your show, you got J.W. Johnson to admit they screwed up the 2015 uniform.
Can you believe that? I couldn't
Yes.
believe I can't believe he said that.
Yes.
He said it with regret.
Yes.
Like the way he was delivering, he's like, sometimes you kind of make mistakes, and maybe if we could go back, maybe we rushed
we probably
the jerseys.
do that. I couldn't believe it.
I couldn't believe it. And then I was like, when he said it, I was trying to make him feel better by saying, I didn't think they were so bad. Jeff didn't think they were so bad. I could appreciate the fact that it said Cleveland across the front. I didn't have a problem with that.
Fire those things into the sun, never to be seen or heard from again. I mean,
they didn't have many wins in them. That was the biggest problem.
No, and you know what? That is what those uniforms will forever be remembered for. 4-44. Hugh Jackson and losing a butt ton of games. That's what those uniforms could be known for. But yeah, so the new helmets have the orange is this is actually the Bernie.
Is
helmet.
the orange orangey on that or no?
No, so this is the actual Bernie replica helmet.
Right.
The shade of orange stays the same. They just turned it into a gloss finish. And then
so it's not matte, it's gloss, right?
Is that what you're saying? Yeah, because the old look was matte. It didn't have a shine to it. So they went back to a gloss finish. The Oreo stripe. It looked kind of weird a couple years ago when they changed the uniforms.
Right.
Took the carbon fiber pattern that was on the Oreo stripe in the center. This year, it was like a rows of blocks alternating. It was in a running bond or in a brick pattern. And,
right.
It just they were trying to Seattle Seahawks the Browns helmets there.
I still think the stripe looks kind of weird with the guys that wear the Pentagon.
Yeah.
Helmet.
So they got rid of that particular pattern when they changed uniforms on the helmet, but then they left everything else alone. So it looks better now. The uniforms look classic, and now the helmet matches them with the white face mask. And of course, was it December 2022 when they played the Ravens at home? They wore the white face masks. The fans loved the white face mask. They wore those from like the mid 1970s all the way up to 1995. And then when the team came back from, I think it was 1999 to about 2004, 2005. And then they switched back to the gray face mask in those mid 2000s. And then of course the Haslams came in and, changed everything up. So back to the white face mask. Bernie Kosar is smiling somewhere. All the 1980s and 1970s Browns players are smiling. And judging by the videos that the team has put out on their social media feed, the current players are smiling at the new helmets. But it really was, bravo. It was the worst kept secret on the planet. Everyone knew that the Browns were switching the helmets, I should say.
Okay, so wait a second. Let's talk about the helmets for a second, because JW again confirmed that and I think all the teams are doing this too, that they will have a third and an alternative helmet. And he didn't kill my idea of a brown helmet with white lettering. Here we go. Hang on a second. Oh, you want the white helmets, right?
So this is the white guy, which I'm a big fan of. They killed. Okay. They absolutely killed this helmet. I mean, they could not have done a better job with this helmet. Okay.
So you think that, but that's the second helmet, right?
So here's what they should do with the third helmet.
Okay.
They should go.
I'm telling you I'm going to tell you what I think they should do, and you're not going to be happy with me.
That's fine. Yeah, I know, because I listened to your show and I'm not happy about it.
Good. You don't have to be, because I think it'd be awesome. I think it'd be a great helmet.
So on the alternate helmet, orange, eliminate the brown stripe. So it's orange with the white stripe, which is what they had in the 1950s.
Okay.
And then put the numbers in white lettering, not gray, but put the player numbers on the sides of the helmet in white. And I think that would be an awesome third helmet. I don't want to see Brownie the Elf on the helmet.
I don't either.
I don't want to see the dumbass dog they came up with last year.
I don't either.
Okay. I don't want Cleveland on it or Cleve.
I don't want I could live with Cleveland.
I don't want Browns written on it because the script Browns is kind of bleh.
I'm not doing the script Browns. I'm telling you, here's what I want to do. Okay. Brown helmet. And you know how, if you get a chance, look at Mount Union's logo. The way it says Raiders in a thicker font that is like flying forward. And if you put the word Browns in there, or you could even do Browns, probably. I'll do Browns over Cleveland and put that over a Brown helmet. Dude, I think those would look slick.
And then
I would wear that helmet.
And then guess what? They should wear.
I would wear it to work.
They should wear brown jerseys and Browns pants. And then if they lose, we can all say, hey, look, they look the way they play. Like crap.
You're not a nice person.
I
want you to turn around into your little glass cabinet behind you and smash your face up against the window. You're not a nice person. That was not nice.
I'm just keeping it real.
I'm talking about an alternative helmet. Like I would expect them to wear the orange with the Oreo stripe all the time. But every once in a while, I mean, I'm the kind of guy that likes black jerseys too, but we could never do black jerseys because of the Bengals. So
I did have some people popping into my mentions today that they want an orange jersey. And I don't know if I'm too crazy about that, but hang on. If they do your suggestion where they do a brown helmet of some sort. Now, you know what I'd be down with? If they did this is called seal brown. So if they did a seal brown helmet with a white stripe, I think that would look pretty sharp. Or it's a seal brown helmet where they reverse the stripes and they go like white, orange, white on it. You know what I'm saying?
Okay. Do a reverse helmet.
Yeah. So
I'm interested to see what they do with the third helmet if they ever do one.
So then you would have an orange, white, and brown helmet. And then when they do their little scoreboard game, where they, put the thing and the helmets move around, there's a football underneath. There you go. You could pick between the brown, the white, and the orange helmet. Which one has the football under it? And they speed it up and they slow it down and then they speed it up and slow. Hey, listen, I'm just trying to bring your vision to life. That's all I'm trying to do.
I want the word Browns on at least one side.
No.
If not both.
No.
I don't know. Maybe I just like that Mountain Union. I like the look of that Mountain Union helmet.
Oh, what about the numerals in white on the brown helmet? That would look really good.
Okay, I could live with that. That wouldn't be bad. I'd like to see a brown helmet, though.
I'm down with the brown helmet as long as there's no logo or like Browns or Cleveland written on the thing. If it's just,
do you think they get crushed if they did one that had any kind of logo on the helmet?
So I've seen. I think there's a lot of really good artists in Cleveland. I think I saw it on This League's X feed. And they just might have like reposted someone else's work, but I did see some mock-ups with Brownie the Elf, plastered on the side of it. And the other thing too is proportion. Like the mock-ups I saw, like Brownie was just massive, like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers did with their flag, where they made the flag supersized on it. Like
anything's better than Major League Baseball's names on the back of their jerseys right now. So I'm good.
You're really stuck on that, aren't you?
I can't stand, and the fact that the pants are see-through and basically rip left and right are ridiculous. All right, let's come back. We're going to talk about Deshaun Watson. We're going to talk about some of the happenings in Berea, maybe even touch the draft here for a second, because we actually might have to care about that, which is coming up in exactly 1 week.
You might care about it. Speak for yourself.
I might go to Detroit just to make you mad. It's always game day in Cleveland. It's always game day in Cleveland. He's Daryl Ryder. Man, it's good to be back. Happy to be off a hiatus and back on the air. Now, should we give them a little bit of a sneak peek of something that could be happening? Should we, there's a major change coming to the show. Maybe I'll just leave it at that.
Well, it might be as seismic as the Bernie helmet's returning. It could be our podcast version of the Bernie helmet's returning.
Okay, hang tight. We're not going to tell you today, but it is a major announcement for this podcast, and it's not going to happen today. So stand by for that. Again, he's Daryl Ryder. I'm Andy Baskin. It is always game day in Cleveland, brought to you by our friends at Smiley One and Bryant, Northeast Ohio's premier heating and cooling solution. All right, Daryl. So We had some talk a little bit, and that was from our good friend Deshaun Watson, who was back in the house, and we got some updates, didn't we?
Yeah, so we did visit with Deshaun on Tuesday. He talked about his shoulder injury, the timetable, which no one still seems to know. No one seems to know when he's going to be 100%. Nobody seems to know when he actually suffered the broken glenoid bone in his shoulder. And the shocker for all of us is when he indicated that it may not have actually happened in the Baltimore game that saw him complete all 14 of his passes in the second half to lead them to that come from behind win. They were down by double digits in the second half. They came back and won it. So here's Deshaun Watson talking about where he's at in his rehab. And then, of course, too, still trying to figure out what the hell happened and when the hell it happened.
I feel really good. Very confident in myself and the process that's going. Shoulder's been really well. So just making sure that I don't do anything extra that's going to harm it or anything like that. So I think that's the biggest thing. That's exactly what, Dr. Elatrash and the guys told me is don't try to do anything extra and rush back. So just follow the script and the plan, and you'll be exactly where you want to be, even better than before. Yeah, I try to do just naturally for myself. I try to do a little bit more, but Joe and those guys are keeping me tamed and making sure that I'm just doing exactly what the program says. If it's 8 reps, then do 8 reps. Don't try to do too much afterwards because they're the experts, and I got to follow their lead, and especially Dr. Elatrash, the surgeon, who been doing our shoulders for a very, very long time, especially a lot of baseball guys. So I'm not sure. I mean, the plan is to, come back whenever they feel like, and I feel like we're on the same page that we're ready. So there's not a timeline or a date that we have that, this is when I'm going to be 100%. It's just kind of, how the process, it can be sooner than later, it can be later than soon, so I think it's just really depending on how each landmark we hit and how fast we can get it and how my shoulder is reacting. No one knows when it actually happened or when that bone actually came apart. I knew for sure in Baltimore, though, because I heard some clicking sounds. And that's one of the indicators that something is wrong with that joint. But that's probably a question for Dr. Elatrash and why he pretty much said that. I just know that he was just very amazed how I finished both of those games.
Daryl, I think when I listen to what he's saying, I'm still trying to figure out if I'm optimistic that he'll be back for the first game of the season. And I think that's the question I think everybody should have on their mind is, will he be back, or are we going to be looking at Jameis Winston week 1 when we find out what the schedule is when we play the schedule game in a couple weeks? Is that not the question? And were you able to kind of figure it out? Because I know last week at the restaurant opening, it felt like he is on track and ready to go. And then maybe because he was in the confines of Berea, he kind of backed off just a little, or at least the tone backed off a little.
My personal view is he will be ready to go week 1. Whether or not that actually materializes remains to be seen. I don't think that there's a danger of that. For me, the question about his availability, and when it comes to the offseason program, is he going to be available in OTAs? He said, yeah, there's a chance, but the doctors also are telling me to take this easy. So I am making sure if they tell me to take 40 or 60 reps, that's what I do. And I don't do anything more above and beyond that as to not delay the progress coming back. So I'm fairly confident that he's going to play week 1. My questions when it comes to Deshaun are not about his availability in week 1. It's about how good is he going to be when he's back on the field. That to me is the question that has to be answered.
All right. So let me, I mean, don't you think that they put themselves in the best position right now to have a plan B and a plan C? Like we're nowhere near where we were last year, where you felt like DTR was going to be the savior coming into that Ravens game.
Right. And look, that's why they brought in Jameis Winston. That's why they're basically now 4 deep at the quarterback position, right? And DTR is probably number 4 on the depth chart behind Huntley. So yeah, I feel like that they made a point, and we saw Andrew Berry do this last year with the defensive line, right? Remember in 2022, they're like, yeah, let's have the kids play and see what we have on our defensive line. And then they were giving up 180 yards a game on the ground. And they're like, okay, yeah, those guys aren't going to cut it. We need to shore up the defensive line. So the 2023 offseason was all about doing that, right? And now this offseason, it was like, okay, we lost Deshaun. We went through 5 quarterbacks. Thank God the New York Jets and nobody else wanted anything to do with Joe Flacco. And he was available. And not only was he available, he still had some football life left in him. And we got it out of him. Like, we got 5 spectacular starts out of him. The playoff game was kind of, we know how that went. Was not good. Never is when you're throwing more touchdowns to the opposition than you are your own teammates. But I digress. So they don't want to be in that position again. And I think that Andrew Berry, I don't want to say learned his lesson, because I think that's kind of harsh, even though they did trade Josh Dobbs at the end of August. And that ended up not being a real smart move. It feels like he realized, hey, we've had 2 seasons of Deshaun. He's not been available for all 17 games. And so we need to insulate ourselves this time. And, Winston did a nice job. Like, he wasn't great with the Saints. I'm a Saints fan. I'm not going to lie. Like, Jameis is a cool dude. Like, his teammates loved him.
They love him. That's all I hear about is how much they love him.
But he was okay. Like, he was a backup quarterback. Okay, fine. So if Jameis has to start 1 or 2 games, if you're a Browns fan, you can feel good about that. You can be okay with that. You can live with that. But if he has to do what Joe Flacco did, right, where you're starting 5, maybe 6 or 7 games, I don't know how that's going to go, Andy.
Yeah, I agree with you. I do think that they've got the right quarterback in a pinch right now, and maybe it's first 2-3 weeks of the season. I hope it's not the first 3 weeks of the season, but I just hope Deshaun's ready.
I think he's going to play week 1. I stand by that. I think he's going to play week 1. I just don't know how good he's going to be.
Stamp it. Next question, the offense, because we heard from Kevin Stefanski. Where are we with this? And, I thought it was interesting that he got asked the question again about who will call the plays.
Yeah, and he said he's not saying. I have a feeling they know what's going to happen. And I got to be honest with you, reading the tea leaves, it very well might be Ken Dorsey when it's all said and done. I asked Stefanski, because they've retooled this offense. They're in the classroom now, learning it. Deshaun's learning Ken Dorsey's new offense now that they're actually allowed to talk football. Because when they went to California, that didn't happen. They didn't do that. There was no talking football. It was,
Oh, no way.
It was.
No, not at all. You don't think the question of how do you feel about Joe Flacco coming back came up there too? Because it was before.
All big picture.
I'm just saying.
So that said, I asked Kevin Stefanski, are we, the media and fans, going to be able to see a noticeable difference with the offense? And then also ended up asking Deshaun, his thoughts on, what the offense is going to allow him to do. And here are their responses from Tuesday.
Yeah, I think it's a good question, Daryl. I think it's probably a better question for you guys when you tell me when you see it. And I think that's one of those things with us. We love to watch tape of different teams and steal from other teams and evolve and that type of thing. So there are certain things within that process that are very, very, very subtle that you may not pick up on, and it may be how we call things or how we rule things. And for any player, an offensive lineman, a wide receiver, some of their rules may change. So it may not be as overt, but I think it's something that happens every season in this league where you have to be evolving. You cannot stay the same. I just think the other coaches in this league are too good. And if you just throw it up on the board and say, hey, it worked last year, it's going to work this year, I just don't think that's fair. I have too much respect for the other coaches and players in this league. From a philosophical standpoint, we see the game very, very similarly, and those are the type of things that we're talking to our players about and how we're trying to structure our offense, and I think you'll hear from Ken and the players as we get going. But so much of this is very similar to how we have always seen it, which is to be an attacking offense and be multiple in a bunch of different ways. How it all unfolds is still something that, in phase 1, you're trying to put pieces together and install your system so that you can evolve as you see what players are emerging, see what players come out of the draft, for instance, so that you are ready to put the offense together that fits your guys best.
Yeah, it's really good. I mean, a lot of opportunities for the receivers to be able to, really showcase their skills. A lot of guys moving around, a lot of guys being able to play different spots, and then myself to just be free and not really kind of controlled in a sense. It's really just kind of go out there and be able to, showcase spread offense, throw it around, run around, and make some plays happen. So that's very exciting for myself. I mean, I guess so. I'm still learning Dorsey's offense. I know he had quarterbacks like, Josh Allen, Cam Newton, running his offense, and those are very similar guys to myself. But for me, I just try to, whatever offense is getting called, I try to execute as best as I possibly can. So, hopefully, it'll be able to showcase my skills that, I've shown before in this league.
Okay, Daryl, so what's your reaction to that then?
Well, I think that Kevin doesn't want to tip the hand, which tells me there's going to be a lot of different and new concepts. And two things stood out to me from the session that we had with Deshaun, who spoke for almost 20 minutes. One, he mentioned freedom of the receiver, or I should say freedom for himself, right? So he's going to have more latitude to, and it feels like there's going to be some street ball built into the offense, if that makes sense, where he's going to be able to improvise. And then the other thing, too, that stood out was when he talked about the receivers and what they're going to be allowed to do within the offense. I found both of those chestnuts that he dropped on us to be very interesting. And I'm really, really intrigued because they're going to be throwing the ball a lot this year. I don't think people are understanding. Like, I realize they redid Nick Chubb's contract. He's not going to be ready for week 1, guaranteed. I don't know when he's going to be ready. I don't think the Browns know when he's going to be ready. They certainly don't want to put any expectation on Chubb. It could be the middle of the season. It could be the back end of the season before we see Chubb again. But it doesn't matter because they're not going to be running the ball the way they used to run the ball. They're going to run the ball in spots to keep defenses honest. So that means a very pass-heavy, also known as modern NFL offense. And it's going to be about pushing the ball down the field. It's because that's what Joe Flacco did in those 5 weeks. He had more throws down the field in 5 starts than Deshaun Watson had in 12. He had 1 fewer touchdown pass in 5 starts than Deshaun Watson had in 12 for the Browns. So, and he threw for like over 1,600 yards in 5 starts as well. So, when you figure that in, like the expectation for me offensively now, Andy, is going to be they're going to throw for 300 yards with regularity, and they're going to be throwing for multiple touchdowns in games with regularity, which I guess it would then be fair to say, yeah, the offense is going to look a little different than what we had been watching the last couple of years.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to be talking about this too as we get a little bit closer to the season. We get ready for, mandatory workouts. We get ready for everything else, the draft coming up next week. And that's something we're going to talk about in the upcoming edition of It's Always Game Day in Cleveland. He's Daryl Ryder. I'm Andy Baskin. And remember, we got a big announcement coming soon as Daryl tells you one more time what those helmets look like. It's always game day in Cleveland.